So today I want to talk about this topic that men really love bitchy women. And there's a book by that same name, Why Men Love Bitches. And I'm not going to talk about that book and I'm not going to dive into that book. It's been years since I've read it. But there are some very key concepts that it does touch on that I'm going to expand on into the categories of what it means to embrace that part of you that has the standards, that has the boundaries, and what the different versions of these people are that men tend to be attracted to, so that we can identify the healthy version and get to the heart of what's going on in that attraction process. So you'll want to stick around because I'm going to make this very clear for you and give you some actionable steps that you can take right now in your life and in your relationships so that you can shift this dynamic for yourself. But first, if you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and what I do with my clients is I help them get to the heart of the subconscious issues that are driving their unwanted behavior, because our subconscious mind is running over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So with custom hypnotherapy processes, with mind coaching, with relationship coaching, and a focus on attachment style, I combine all of this so that my clients can get to the heart of what's going on and actually create the life and the love that they want. So if you'd like to learn more and set up a completely complimentary consultation call, you can check out the link in the description below where you and I can chat and we can get to the heart of what's going on and I can make my best recommendations. And also, if this content resonates with you, I really do appreciate it if you would click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. So let's talk about this dynamic of why men love bitches. Well, there are some different kinds of categories that these fall in. Now, the first one is kind of the man who wants to abdicate his responsibilities. He wants someone who will make all the decisions for him and someone who can kind of take over when he's feeling helpless and powerless. And so oftentimes in that dynamic, these are men who were raised by really controlling or domineering mothers. And so when life kind of crumbles for them, they end up being really drawn to the type of woman who will just take charge and take over. And so we might put that person in the category of, she's kind of a bitch. And I don't even want to use that in a derogatory way, because I do think that what happens is societally, we tend to label women as being bitchy when what they're really doing is being assertive. And so I don't ever want to squash like assertiveness. It's a positive quality. But in these dynamics, there's always sort of a counterbalance, it's sort of like the opposites attract kind of thing. Maybe that woman in that case feels really safe being controlling and domineering and calling all the shots. And this man doesn't really have many opinions of his own or is worn out and abdicates his responsibility. And then he doesn't want to think for himself, sort of. So she kind of saves the day for him. And so in some ways, they're probably benefiting each other, but maybe not in the way that creates a really healthy dynamic where both people have an equal voice, where they're equally sharing their thoughts and feelings, and where they're navigating conflict and life together. So that is the first category, that abdicating his responsibilities to someone who wants to call the shots. And the second category is the drama person, right? This is the person who is maybe always having the highs and lows, the push, the pull, the picking a fight over nothing, making things explosive, coming back together. Now, men do this and women do this. And so men who choose women like that tend to get stuck in the trauma bond, the same kind of trauma bond that women get stuck with when they choose men like that. And if they're both kind of volatile, up and down, push and pull people, then they're just going to have this ongoing dynamic. And you might look at that relationship from the outside and be like, why is he with this person? And the reality is that most of the time, these are the people who say, I don't like drama. I don't want any drama. But in reality, they're kind of addicted to the drama. They're addicted to the adrenaline that they're getting pumping through their body and all these chemicals that happen when these arguments happen. And so they can stay in relationships with people that create a bit of drama, and it's really just a trauma bond for the most part, typically. So that's sort of the second category. but it's the third category that I really want to focus on in this video. So the third and healthy dynamic of the woman that we might throw in the category of being a bitch isn't drama-filled, isn't manipulative and controlling. This person knows her worth, knows her boundaries, understands what she can and can't accept. This is the woman who is willing to say no. This is the woman who is willing to call someone else out on their behavior when it happens, not because they want to pick a fight out of nowhere, but because it's not okay behavior, or they're just going to be brutally honest about who they are and what they want. Now, this person doesn't do it in a way that's explosive and destructive. They just aren't afraid to walk away if their values aren't being honored, if they aren't being matched in what they're looking for. And that doesn't mean some crazy, demanding list of unreasonable things. These are things that a healthy person has looked at in themselves and said, this is what I value. These are my values. These are my ideals. These are what matter to me. And I'm not going to expend too much time and energy on someone who will not meet me there. And when you're dealing with someone like that, it might be frustrating for a man because she's not going to let things slide, but she's also going to expect him to be a man, to step up to the plate, not try to control him, not try to be domineering, not try to manipulate, not try to be volatile in the drama area, but just real about who she is, how she feels. And that doesn't mean numb and flat all the time. She may have some emotions, but when she's addressing things and making a request, it's not about causing drama. It's about getting that clear message across with the intent that she is willing to walk away if those aren't something that aligns with her partner. And so at the end of the day, that is the healthy relationship dynamic. And it's also the healthy kind of woman that men are attracted to. Now, I'm not going to say that men aren't attracted to that controlling woman that does call the shots and that they can abdicate their responsibilities to and just kind of let her run the show, or the one that they get into the bickering battles with and the blame game and the drama and the up and down because they get in a trauma bond. There are men attracted to those women. But at the end of the day, if you want to attract someone who is healthy, who is balanced, who is willing to give you the same respect that you're willing to give him, then you want to have those traits of the woman who is willing to hold her ground, who is willing to walk away, and who isn't willing to take breadcrumbs. So when someone's accepting breadcrumbs, it's typically because they've been starved in some area. They've been so starved, they're so hungry that they get sucked into the breadcrumbs. And so when that happens, you can kind of get a little blind to the fact that maybe you aren't getting your needs met fully, or there's not a lot of clarity around a situation. And so you want to be able to step back. So I want to give you some very specific steps that you can do so that you can dial into this and be able to hold your own in a relationship. And I'm talking about, those things that you notice about someone else that are going to kind of become a pet peeve that's going to gnaw at you, and you might get a little bit resentful about, or you might just want to walk away from them because you don't want to hurt their feelings and say something. You've got to be able to get over that. And you've got to be able to tell people the truth in a kind, loving, and clear way. Because if you don't, then you're expecting them to read your mind, just like sometimes they might expect you to read theirs, but it's not a healthy dynamic, okay? So we want to be able to first identify the patterns of your past. So look at your life. And I've had to look way back because I've been married for most of my adult life. So if I was going to look at patterns in my now, single dating life in my 40s, I have to look all the way back to dating in high school because I was married for so long. And so for me, it took the process of looking at all of the things, the patterns back then, the patterns that would show up in my relationships that were committed, and the patterns that have reemerged or even shown up differently in the dating life that I'm in now. The things that maybe catch me off guard, the things that make me go, oh, I've just I'm not going to go there with that person, or they're not what I need. Instead, we want to slow it all down and look at it and get really honest with ourselves. And in that process, you're going to see if you have some knee-jerk reactions and what those might mean about you, whether you have some anxious attachment, some avoidant attachment, some fearful avoidant attachment styles, and which parts of you have that secure part of attachment. And so navigating that with the lens of everything that's gone into your life up to this point can be tricky, because the subconscious mind is running everything, but you don't have access to it unless you're in hypnosis, right? For the most part, you don't have access to it. And so these things, these feelings, these beliefs feel really strong and they feel really true. And so we've got to be able to challenge ourselves and our narrative so that we can get really honest about what we are and aren't doing, how we are and aren't showing up, where we are being clear and honest in a kind way. Because sweeping things under the rug and ignoring things and not addressing them and acting like, it's really something else that bothers you because you don't want to hurt someone, like none of that is healthy and none of it is kind. It's not helping you and it's not helping the other person. And so you really want to, in a relationship, take your time. You want to delay. You want to delay moving into a more intense, connected space because you need the time to gather that info about the other person and about yourself. You need to slow things down enough that you can be self-reflective. So taking things slowly is that next part. Now, the reason you want to take things slowly, and the third part of this, is that you don't want to flood yourself with oxytocin, because when you are sexually connected to a partner, you tend to get flooded with oxytocin, which is that love chemical, feels so good. It's that bonding chemical, but it's also the thing that makes you dumb and in love. Right? It makes you overlook things that you wouldn't normally overlook. And so then later down the road, you see those things when everything's kind of stabilized and you go, what was I thinking? And so you want to delay the oxytocin, not because being sexually connected is bad in some way or any of that. It's because it messes with your perception. And so the last and most impactful thing you could ever do is to do the deep subconscious work. This is where you dive in and do the reframing work so that that part of you that felt abandoned as a child doesn't get sucked into someone who's manipulative, or that part of you that's been starved for so long doesn't feel like the breadcrumbs are such a great thing. They actually know they're not satisfying enough. And so it really requires you to know who you are, what you want, what your patterns are, what your highest values are, what your priorities are to get you to those values. And then anything that doesn't line up with those is much more easily dismissed. You're not going to waste your time. You're not going to waste your energy. It doesn't mean you're not going to give people a little bit of time to unfold who they are and be curious and open. That maybe that lightning bolt attraction thing that you're used to having, maybe that's actually the trauma that is your subconscious trying to recreate or reconnect with, or whatever that is, because it feels so strong that you think it must be right. So when in doubt, you need to really delay. And even when you feel like you're not doubting and you feel like, oh, this is so great, you still need to delay, and you still need to take time, and you still need to collect data and observe. And if someone is acting out in a way that is not something that aligns with you, it's disrespectful to you or your belief system or your ultimate values in your life, it's time to call it out. And you can do it clearly, and you can do it kindly, and you can, express that, hey, it maybe isn't your intention, but this doesn't work for me, knowing that you're willing to walk away. So if you're not willing to walk away, then you probably need to think about why that is, if this thing that the other person is doing is such a big deal. Because your willingness to walk away is your superpower. That is the, bitch mentality, right? That, in my opinion, isn't bitchy at all. It's assertive, and it is putting your needs, your desires in a place of priority so you don't become a doormat. So you don't let go of those values and look back years later and go, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I let all that time go? None of my needs were being met. this wasn't mutual. And all because you had some old subconscious programming of not wanting to be alone or not wanting to start over, wondering if maybe there isn't something better out there or whatever that is that's holding you back. That's what's keeping you from stepping into your assertiveness, which is exactly what people are talking about when they say men love bitches. They love women who are assertive enough to hold the line. The people who love doormats are narcissists. They are the people who want to control, who want to manipulate, and who want you to not have a voice of your own. So if that's who you want to attract, then by all means be the doormat, but I bet that's not who you want to attract. So if you'd like to get to the heart of whatever it is you're struggling to implement in your own life, again, check out that link in the description below. And again, if this content resonates with you, I would really appreciate it if you could click like and subscribe so you can be notified every time I post a new video. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.